You're listening to From the Pink Seats podcast of the State of Louisville Podcast Network. Now, here's your hosts, Jacob, Lane, Matt McGavic, and Vince LeCoco.
Welcome in to a winning edition of From the Pink Seats podcast. Jacob, Lane, Matt McGavic, just the originals tonight. Vince LeCoco out at the lake enjoying Labor Day weekend. Our schedules were absolute shit show this week here on the show, but tonight you're stuck with Matt and myself. We're excited to get into a lot to talk about with the Louisville Georgia Tech game. We are From the Pink Seats, brought to you by Manscaped and Kern's Korner. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Subscribe to the show anywhere that you get your podcasts. Follow us on Twitter at Pink Seats Pod. Matt, buddy, how are you, man? Did you have a nice road trip?
I had a fantastic road trip. I mean, I will say the actual coverage of the game was not that great because about half an hour before the game started, I started getting a splitting headache, and I had it the entire time. And brother, well, let me tell you, when I say I could barely see, I mean, you probably saw the tweet. I said that that second missed Georgia Tech field goal was made, and I had that up there for a solid 2 minutes because from what I could see, quote unquote, it looked like he made it.
Seeing sideways, man.
Yeah, that part was not fun, but the actual on-field products, well, maybe not the products. The result was fun. The parts of the products were to be desired, but the end result was pretty good.
How would you grade the Mercedes-Benz press box experience for those noobs who will never be able to walk in such a king's palace? How would you grade it?
Oh, I've been there before. It's really nice. It's not situated right above the 50 or right behind the end zone. It's kind of in between, like on the corner of the the west end zone. But it's a really nice open air setup. It's so you can hear everything. It's really immersive. I like it.
Well, I'm glad that you had a good time. I saw on your road trip, you made a stop on the way back. And I have to admit, man, I think a lot of our audience here will, and maybe you, I think you're going to give me quite a bit of shit about this. I've never been to Buc-ee's before. I had never heard of it before about 4 or 5 months ago. Help me understand the allure of this place, because like every time I see it, people are like, oh, that's amazing. What a cool place. And then I'm like, well, what's in there? And people are like, snacks. You know, it's like a gas station.
It's basically a gas station if it was a super Walmart.
Okay, so like furniture, like what? Tell me how.
That's
like
actually
a superstore.
That's actually the one thing they don't sell is furniture. But I mean, they've got jerky, they've got your typical gas station stuff like candy, drinks, and all that. But they also sell clothing. They sell brisket, desserts, fresh jerky. It's insane. And plus they've got, I mean, if I had to guess, they've probably got close to 100 pumps, maybe more. So it's
what do you mean, like gas pumps?
Gas pumps.
Oh,
yes.
Okay. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like pumps on top of like your drink?
No,
ice cream, or like what are we talking pumps here?
No. I'm talking gas pumps. They have it's huge. It's an experience. The first time I went there, I didn't know what I was expecting. I was in the same boat as you, like, oh, it's gas station. How great can it be? And then I went there and I'm like, holy shit, this place is amazing.
It sounds like you leave with the meat sweats. Like that's the essentially you sign up to go in. If you're talking brisket and jerky, like you're leaving there with, a spike in cholesterol and a potential heart attack waiting for you at your next destination. Sounds like a riveting place to be. And following a football game, sounds like you had a nice time. I'm very excited for you. I'm sure coming back after a win is much better than driving 6 hours after a loss. You know, I can imagine.
Yeah, it's not a fun drive because I mean, you kind of get over it after a while, but there's the drive back is a lot shorter whenever it's a victory drive. That's for sure.
That's right. And it was a hard fought victory. I want to say I never lost faith. I never had that sinking feeling in my stomach like the game was over, even with the Georgia
that's
Tech
one
run.
of us, because I certainly had that.
Sure. I don't know what it was, right? I'm normally a very pessimistic person that when a game, starts to shift and the momentum goes one way so quickly, especially Louisville football, I'm like, all right, shit, here we go. It's over. But there was just so much that happened in the second half that went Louisville's way after a first half that was just so up and down in a bunch of different ways. Before we get into that, Did you watch any other college football this weekend? I know you were driving back most of Saturday, but did you get to lock into maybe the North Carolina, South Carolina game or the West
I
Virginia, Penn State game?
I actually once I got home, I did watch the North Carolina South Carolina game for about maybe 3 or so quarters before I fell asleep on the couch. But on the drive back, I was listening to the radio broadcast for Colorado TCU, and Colorado not only might be good, but they're fun.
Yeah,
I
they
can
are.
only imagine what it was like to see that in person.
I watched that game almost in its entirety, but this is the first year where I'm committed to like watching college football as much as I can outside of Louisville. I don't know if it's the transfer portal. I don't know what it is, but my antennas are up far more this year than they ever have been. So I watched most of that game. And let me tell you, Shedeur Sanders is the real freaking deal. I want to see.
So is Travis Hunter.
Exactly right. That interception that Travis Hunter had was just
that was
beautiful, insane, man.
That was an NFL level play. Like some NFL guys, they don't make that play, and that's like a throw you make 99 times out of 100. That's just an easy pitch and catch, easy score. And Travis Hunter swoops in out of nowhere to just pick it off like he was Superman or something. Like it's just phenomenal.
It was a great game, man.
Yeah, and then he not only does that, but plays on the other side of the ball and gets 100 receiving yards. I think the stat that I saw is that he played 129 total snaps. That's got to be damn near the whole game.
Yeah, I mean, close to it. And not even that. I saw he had only allowed one reception the entire game out of like 5 or 6 targets in the first half. I don't know where it ultimately ended up shaking out to be. But I'm curious how sustainable that is. If he does this all year, dude, and they go
Heisman.
say 10, Heisman, right. Just certified high. Like we haven't seen this. The Heisman's all about flash and substance, I feel like, in a way. That's flash and substance right there. The last thing I want to say before we talk about Louisville, did you happen to catch the Texas Tech and Wyoming game?
I didn't catch it, but I heard what happened.
Well, I don't know what happened in the game outside of the lightning delay, but I have to say to you how cool it is that a team like Texas Tech went and played on the road at Wyoming. Like you don't see that very often where Power 5 football teams travel to go play some of those smaller schools. I think it would be really cool for Louisville to do that. I don't know, someone regionally like East Carolina or something, like it would be dope for Louisville to go and play in like a very small mid-major type of stadium. It's a risk that you take, but it was really cool to see that. And I don't know if you saw the tweet earlier, but there was a fan that wore a cowboy hat, some boots, and what?
No, I saw it only because your ass tweeted and tagged me in it.
Yeah, man, we got to get you dressed up like that on Thursday night, man. For those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, go look at the Pink Seats Pod Twitter. Matt is going to dress like that in the press box as he sits next to Rick Bozich, who starts to laugh uncontrollably. It's something that Jeff Brohm did.
No, seriously. And one more in general college football observation before we actually dive into what people are here for. Did you happen to watch that Florida-Utah game?
I did. I did watch quite a bit of that game. Yeah, Florida sucks, man.
Florida. I came away from that more so thinking that Florida sucked, more so than Utah's good. And I think Utah is good. I mean, we saw what they did last year. I mean, they're the 2-time defending Pac-12 champions for a reason. I mean, they're a good team, but then Florida just couldn't stop shooting themselves in the foot. And I mean, I don't know what they were expecting when they brought in Graham Mertz, because I mean, he's okay. I mean, he didn't do anything spectacular at Wisconsin. So I don't know why there seemed to be a ton of expectations placed on, maybe not a ton of expectations, but like expectations period placed on this team when you've got a guy like him leading the ship. And not to say that Graham Mertz is dog shit, because he's not, but he's just like,
That game was almost funny. It was like embarrassingly bad play calling by Florida. And I tweeted this, but it should be a federal crime for Billy Napier to allow Graham Mertz to be assigned the number 15. I mean, Tim Tebow, just got to be ashamed to see that number doing such bad football.
I'm surprised that numbers were not retired.
That's what I'm saying, man. That feels like a number that would have been retired by now. I found that to be very interesting. So anyways, all right, let's talk Louisville, Georgia Tech. 39-34. Louisville walks away victorious in Atlanta in the season opener with a road conference. We'll call it a road conference because I know it's at a neutral field, but really a road game for Louisville. 1-0 in conference play, where you want to be if you're Jeff Brohm. How they got there, it was scary hours there for a little bit in the second half. You're talking about something that you did not expect to see. Louisville giving up just some of the biggest, runs we've seen the last really 2.5 years. I mean, they didn't do that last year a ton. So for them to just have these giant holes was just a very interesting turn that I did not expect to see. We'll start here, man. We'll start with Jack Plummer. I mean, he ultimately shakes out with decent numbers, 18 of 31, 247, 3 touchdowns and 1 interception. But it really was a Jekyll and Hyde with him at quarterback. In the first half, he had a lot of opportunities, including the first drive, first drive of the game. Jimmy Callaway on a slant and just kind of, really kind of underthrows it. And Jimmy Callaway has to try to come back to catch that. Probably should have. And then the second drive, there's, more missed passes, and it would just go on and go on and go on. Matt, what was your perspective of that? Because to me, it just looked like the moment in the first half was too big.
Yeah, no, that was probably my biggest takeaway with how Jack Plummer looked in that first half. I mean, he just looked jittery. I mean, and I know Mark Ennis said it best. He had a weird combination of jittery and slow, which is really hard to pull off. I know I kind of expected him to have like a little bit of nerves because, it's the first game of the season. I mean, you're going to have nerves for like a series or two. But he just did not look comfortable at all in that first half. And it got to a point where you start to legitimately question, okay, if he's not going to be able to live up to the moment, do I have to go to someone else? And credit to Jeff Brohm for sticking with him and having Jack do what he did in the second half. But there were some moments where Plummer looked flat out bad. But I mean, in hindsight, it's always 2020, but it was what he did was very correctable because it just seemed like he was not decisive at all with his passes. And that's really like what I think his biggest problem was in that first half. He had no confidence. His mechanics weren't sound. He was throwing off of his back foot. He wasn't planting his feet. He wasn't doing anything of what we saw all throughout the offseason and frankly during his last season at Cal. Like it did not look like Jack Plummer at all. So to see Brohm stick with Plummer in the second half and to see Plummer actually respond to the the ass chewing that Brohm gave that entire team at halftime, I mean, give credit to both parties involved, Brohm for sticking with him and Plummer for rising up to the challenge.
Yeah, it was really interesting. It was this evolution of like, okay, this is concerning. Okay, first throw, then it's a couple of throws, and you're like, all right, maybe the people you're with, you lean over and you're like, all right, maybe he's just nervous, right? And then it's 5-6 throws, and then there's a couple of them that are in the dirt. Now he did connect on that deep ball with Kevin Coleman, which would have been a walk-in touchdown had he put the ball out in front of Coleman, or at least would have been given him an opportunity to score. There were some highlights and some nice moments, but overall it was just inaccurate and really kind of shooting Louisville in the foot. I don't know, man. The one thing that you can't even look at as a possible criticism or as a possible reason why that could be is the offensive line, because they were damn near perfect. I mean, literally no tackles for loss, no sacks. That's the second game in a row, I believe, now that they've done that, where they have kept the quarterback upright, because I believe Cincinnati last year also was that case. So you're talking about an offensive line that showed you that they are the real deal. And for him to not be able to find the footing in the rhythm, it was concerning because the opportunities were there left and right. I mean, the receivers were getting open, it felt like, from what I could see on TV.
Yeah, no, they were, I don't want to say running completely free, but I mean, they were running to the point where, I mean, they had a large window for Plummer to put it in, and he was just whiffing horrendously. He was throwing it behind, throwing it down low, like you said, into the dirt. What was really bad was that final passing attempt of the half when he was trying to fit that ball in a tight window to Jamari Thrash. And not only was the throw itself not really great, the decision was okay. I mean, if he put it kind of a little bit more above Jamari's head, he might have been able to catch that and run the length of the field, but he threw that way too close to the safety, and the safety made a play on it. And Louisville's fortunate that Georgia Tech was not able to convert that into points and go into the halftime with an even larger deficit than they were already staring at.
The missed opportunity for a wide open Nate Kariski in the end zone was one that was just maddening in real time, because just the way that the camera was following behind Jack, you see Nate Kariski flash open standing there, and Jack has just a perfect window, and either he doesn't see him or he doesn't trust what he sees and doesn't let go of that ball. And I think he either tries to run in or throws an incomplete pass. I can't remember exactly what happened, but you're talking about another opportunity for a touchdown right there. So there was a lot of those. I mean, just over and over again in the first half. So, and it got to the point where I never thought, okay, you go away from Jack completely, but it felt like, knowing what Jeff Brohm and his staff have done with two quarterbacks in the past, felt like maybe because of the fact that there's opportunity right here, you just need somebody to sling it. Maybe Brock is somebody that you go to for a drive to build confidence. But kudos to them, man. They stuck with Plummer in the second half. It was a night and day.
And it's funny you mentioned that last point, how going away from Plummer, I mean, they kind of did without actually having to do it, because in that those first few drives of the third quarter, I mean, Plummer was running it on read options and getting involved with going up the middle. Like I had no idea that was even in the playbook for a guy like Plummer. Not saying he's a statue like he's Tom Brady back there, but I mean, he's not a scrambler. He's not at all. I mean, he has the ability to extend plays with his legs, but he's not the kind of guy where he's going to scramble out of the pocket and go like 20 yards downfield. But just so to see him get involved in the passing and then the running game, and that was I think an impressive chess move from Brohm, because that's a way to settle his nerves.
Right, and no one saw that coming.
Yeah, one, they didn't see it coming. I didn't see it coming for sure. And two, it's just a way for him to settle in and be like, okay, just going through the motions here this game. This will help me get going. Let's go.
Yeah, and to kind of back up that story, right? He leads the team in total carries. Now, some of those were not designed carries, but 9 carries for 51 yards. I don't know his background, but is that a career high in rushing yards? Did he just do that in game one, man? Like, I'm curious if that's
it's got to be up there. That's for sure.
He set the bar high for his rushing. I mean, he looks good, man. He's a good runner, and kudos to him, man. I do think that everyone, including myself, was a little harsh on him just because the expectations were so high and it fell so short in that first half. But a half is a half. It's not the season. You can put that behind you. And the second half, I mean, both of the touchdown throws to Jamari Thrash were a thing of beauty. Like, they were absolutely stunning. Trusting in Jack Plummer was different for Jeff Brohm. That's something he had not done previously. And you got to give them a lot of credit for doing that, man, because he was not playing well. They stick with their guy, and he gets it turned around. And in the second half, he's throwing darts out there, and it really opens up the offense to the point that, he ends up with some pretty good numbers. You know what I mean? It's 3 touchdowns is no bad day, including a win. You know what I mean? So how about spread the ball around? I mean, I thought it was really interesting how Jamari Thrash obviously leads with 7 receptions, but you have Kevin Coleman getting involved. Chris Bell had a nice game on those 2 catches. Amari Huggins-Bruce, Jimmy Callaway, they get the running backs involved. I mean, what do you think about overall the utilization of weapons?
I would have liked to see a couple other guys get involved, like Amari. I think he had 3 catches, but they were only for like 18 yards. But it was nice to see them not try and force feed it to Jamari. And obviously he's going to command his fair of targets because he's the best wide receiver they have. But there were times under Satterfield where we just got accustomed to, well, not times. I mean, it was evident last season where there were times where they just wanted to force feed it to either Tyler Hudson or Marshawn Ford. And yeah, Jamari Thrash ended up with 7 catches and 9 targets, which led everyone in the game, including Georgia Tech. But Kevin Coleman got involved. He had that really pretty deep ball that probably would have been a touchdown had it been hit in stride. But regardless, that was a big play. Bruce got involved. Chris Bell had a couple catches. One of them was a really nice catch and run up the sideline. I was a little disappointed with Callaway. Now, a couple of targets his way were not exactly the best balls from Plummer, but A couple other ones were just straight drops.
Yeah.
And especially there was, I can't remember what exactly it was, but I remember, I think it was Callaway committed a penalty at some point in the second half on a design run play, which you can't do that. If you're far and away from the play and you're just basically a decoy, you can't be committing penalties.
Yeah, it's an interesting stat too. The third down conversions for Louisville to finish that game the way that they did, going 1 of 11. I mean, that's one of those statistics that you typically don't win a lot of football games if you go 1 of 11 on third down. Time and time again, it seemed like they just couldn't figure it out. No matter what it was, that there was just kind of this block or this lock on third downs of being able to find a play that worked, being able to get the right amount of yards. They came up just a few yards short a couple of times. It was frustrating. I mean, it really was. It just didn't feel like that's how things should be going, considering that Georgia Tech was good. Don't get me wrong, right? I think we both know that they played a really nice game, but it just always felt like if you just make this slight adjustment, if you can just figure this out, whatever it is, whether it's Jack Plummer's throwing, whether it's defensively trying to cover some of those holes up, whatever it is, if you could just make this adjustment, we can win this game. They had a couple of breaks go their way, a couple of turnovers, but overall, it was really solid coaching, I think, in this game that made the difference for Louisville. Tight ends, how concerned are you that there was not a single catch by a tight end in an offense that is very, very active throwing the football to that position?
I'm not going to sound the alarm just yet, just because, a lot of the passing games struggled to get going until the second half. But I mean, it's not a great development, that's for sure. And especially when I look at the Pro Football Focus numbers, like see how they were graded and whatnot, and the two tight ends who saw a decent amount of snaps, which were Nate Kariski and Josh Lifson, they were graded out as two of the worst offensive players in that whole game. Kariski actually ended up having the worst game out of everyone with a PFF grade of 46.3. Josh Lifson, second worst with 52.5. Granted, a lot of that was them getting active in the run game, but still, that's not going to cut it in this offense that relies so much on having a go-to tight end to kind of take pressure away from the receivers. I mean, hell, we talked plenty over this offseason about how important Payne Durham was for Purdue last season. I mean, he was the third-round draft pick of the Buccaneers because of how important he was. So someone in that tight end room is going to have to get going, whether that's Lifson, Kariski, whether that's Joey Gatewood, maybe give some more snaps to Jamari Johnson. Someone's got to step up.
Yeah, a game this like Murray State coming up this week, which we'll preview here in just a few minutes, obviously will be important to get some reps for Joey Gatewood, for Jamari Johnson, for Nate Kariski, all these young guys trying to work their way through in this new system. And Josh Lifson, obviously not as a younger guy, but still trying to kind of figure out what the role looks like. They didn't hurt the team, right? That's I guess, a positive in a game like this. They blocked well, really an extension of that offensive line, and made sure that they could run the football when they needed to. And finally, Jawar Jordan, Isaac Guriendo, Mo Turner, the split 7, 7, and 6 with Jawar and Mo with 7 carries and Isaac with 6 carries. I thought they all ran the ball really well. Isaac Guriendo is a freaking power ball, man. Whenever he gets going, he is just fun to watch. He is going to be a guy that I really look forward to seeing how he grows in his role as probably, some more of that power back guy, him and Mo Turner, and then also just the ability to catch the ball and do things out of the backfield. And then how about the run, man? I mean, just an absolute thing of beauty. Like, he just picked right up where he left off last year.
Not only did he almost crack 21 miles an hour, but he, like, right close to the line of scrimmage, he took a big hit from someone trying to tackle him. He just kind of absorbed it and kept on running.
Ate it. He just ate that shit, man.
Yeah, I know. That was one of the more impressive runs that I've seen over the last few years. And Jordan's had a handful of impressive runs.
They're going to be a fun trio to watch, man. If they can get going overall, I think they have really a big opportunity to make some noise. And they also ran, some of the, East and West type stuff with wide receivers with Jimmy Callaway and Amari Huggins-Bruce getting 3 carries between the two of them. So a lot of creative play calling. The offense really obviously comes through in the clutch, makes the big plays that you need with those 2 throwing touchdowns to Jamari Thrash, and then the rushing touchdown to kind of seal it with Jawar.
I know that Mo Turner, Isaac Garendo, very good, very capable backs. They have a role in this offense. But Jawar Jordan's got to get more than 7 carries. He's got to. He's too good. I mean,
did it feel like he disappeared for a little bit where you were like, okay, they're going to put him back in type of thing?
I thought he might be hurt.
That's right. I thought the same thing. I texted the group like, where's Jaws at, man? What happened?
Yeah. I mean, he's too good to have more than just 5. His 74-yard run was just his 5th carry of the game. Now, granted, when you have 94 yards and 5 carries, I mean, that shows you how good you are. And it shows you that, hey, he should probably have a bigger role than single-digit carries. Not to say that Mo and Isaac are not good, because, they're, like I said, they're good, very capable backs, very clearly have a role on this team. But Jordan is one of the best running backs in the ACC. If you're going to have a chance to win against some of the tougher teams on the schedule, he's going to have to take the lion's shares of running back reps.
I think that he's going to continue to get more and more comfortable and continue to make big plays. I mean, that's just a testament to the kind of player he is, to where he's just ready to go after not getting much opportunity in the first half, and that drive to seal the game. I mean, that's what you want right there, is a home run hitter who you can set into the game and he can just completely flip it in a matter of a few seconds. Was an absolutely great football moment. One of those just defining first game under a new head coach type of moments. And when you go to how it's set up, you talk about the defense, right? And you talk about the turnovers. I mean, how about on the first drive of the game, Ashton just comes loose off of the edge on that left tackle,
tackle.
Just destroys the quarterback. The ball goes up, the ball's tipped, and then Ramon Purrier just follows it down like a center fielder into his glove. I talk about just a way to get started and set the tone. It's like, all right, man, this defense is about to get rolling right where they were last year with picking the ball off.
With the exception of that second quarter. Well, I mean, you can say a lot of things defensively with the exception of that second quarter. But, I mean, for the other 3 quarters, the defensive front and the front 7 overall looked fantastic. I mean, some of the best players on the night for Louisville were guys on the defensive line: Ashton Gelati, Stephen Heron, Cam Wilson, Des Tell. I mean, they made life hell for Haynes King. I mean, they were getting in the backfield with relative regularity. Now, I mean, they probably would have gotten in there more had they not been holding Ashton on damn near every play. But, to each their own. But it was good to see them have that sort of an impact when it seemed that the secondary at times was kind of hit or miss. I mean, there were times, especially in that second quarter, they were giving up play after play after play after play. But then when you look at the first quarter and in the second half, there were a couple throws that were just a product of Haynes King just straight up overthrowing his man. It was one of those plays where, like, the defensive back didn't really have much to do with the outcome of the play. And then there were other times where the defensive back wasn't in the best spot to make a play. Basically, they were not nearly the impact that I thought they were going to be, especially against a passing attack that lags so much more behind Georgia Tech's rushing attack, at least if you ask me.
Yeah, it was an interesting game from the secondary. And while I know it's more of like a linebacker type of situation, I thought losing Ben Perry early was troubling for the defense. Although Antonio Watts came in and played a hell of a game in his spot, tied for third on the team in tackles with 4, had one of the few tackles for loss. I just felt like that kind of knocked the wind out of them a little bit, took them a little bit of time to recover from. Josh Minkins started the game really well, had 7 tackles, led the team in tackles, but also, there was a couple of opportunities where he just took a bad angle, it felt like, and came up on the wrong side of a ball carrier and missed, an opportunity to bring him down earlier in a play. I thought Storm Duck and Quincy Riley both were kind of up and down. Jarvis Brownlee, you didn't really see much of him, but when they did go his way, it felt like he was all over it. And, the numbers for him, only one tackle, kind of show a story of not really making an impact, but it felt like he kind of locked down his side of things when Haynes King did test them. And don't get me wrong, man. Mike Rutherford. I was calling him Mike Rutherford the whole game. Mike Rutherford. I mean, he was an absolute burner of a receiver. And then Chase Lane, my distant cousin, 3 receptions, 69 yards for the touchdown. They had weapons. Andre Ware was going to cream his jeans up there talking about freaking Eric Singleton and his speed. Oh, no one's ever going to catch him if he gets out, ahead of the defense. He was just kept hyping him up over and over and over again. But Louisville, I thought, contained. They did what they needed to do in the passing game to make sure the game didn't get away from them. I know Haynes King finished with 313 and 3 touchdowns, which has got to be probably one of his best efforts of his career. But I felt like they did what they needed to when he really tests them with a deep throw or with, kind of a big moment. And then the rushing game, outside of Trey Cooley, which we're going to call him Trey now. It's like Drew in The Office. If you're an Office fan, I'm Drew now. Trey Cooley, I don't know what you chalk that up to outside of just good play calling and good execution by the offense. The defense, I wish Vince was here to walk through maybe where they were out of position or what that looked like, but it's just you take it, you eat it, and they bounce back from it, which is very, very, very good. But it's something that you have to figure out moving forward because you're going to play some teams with some very dynamic weapons this year who will they'll dice you up, man. And if you're playing the run game like that, Matt, we're going to be playing games that are fun and they're going to win 45-41, but it's like the defense is going to get gashed if it's going to look like that.
I mean, to be fair, they looked like they were containing the running game more so than they looked like they weren't. I think
that's a good point. That's really good point.
When they held Georgia Tech scoreless in the first quarter, held Georgia Tech scoreless in the third quarter, and didn't allow them to score in the fourth quarter until their last drive. So that second quarter, burn the tape there. But 75% of the game, they're winning the point of attack. It was just only because of that second quarter, they were just getting their ass absolutely kicked.
They gave up 4.6 yards per carry overall in the game. I'll take that. You know what I mean? That's
not bad. Yeah, it's not bad when you think about it.
Outside of the 23-yard touchdown for Trey Cooley and outside of a couple of 13, 15-yard runs, there really was nothing. And I got to give kudos, man, to freaking TJ Quinn, our guy, Matt. Like he played a hell of a game and he lit up a few defenders, man. Like a few runners. He did his business, man, coming straight downhill and absolutely letting them know he was a linebacker and not a safety.
There's a reason that you and I have been kind of singing his praises this whole offseason, especially in the fall with how good he looked. This is a guy who I think by the time we get towards the end of the season, we're going to look back at this and be like, yeah, he was probably one of the more important guys on this Louisville defense.
Yeah, absolutely. And so overall, we asked Twitter, what are the big takeaways from this game? And Matt, I'll ask you your big takeaway. I'll give you mine here in a second. We got some good answers, and we didn't even talk about this one from JC Linderman. It says kicking game is better than I expected. This team is mentally tough. Both of those points, true. Brock Travelstead, man. He's like Travis Hunter. You know what I mean? He's a special teams Travis Hunter out there, man.
It was probably something we should have sort of seen coming because Carl Maslowski, when we were talking to him in fall camp, he mentioned that before he left to go to Purdue after last spring, not this past spring, but the spring before, Brock was fighting James Turner for the starting spot. And the only reason that Travelstead didn't end up winning that job was because Brock was hurt. So he didn't really have a chance. So James Turner, I don't want to say he won it by default because he's a good kicker in his own right. But he kind of had the competition eliminated whenever he got hurt. So, but still, going 4 for 4 is nothing to sniff at, especially when it's just a 5-point game. And then you saw Georgia Tech. I mean, their kicker missed both of his kicks. And if he made both of his kicks, Louisville loses this game by 1.
That's right. That's right. That's a really kind of underrated storyline of this game. Another underrated storyline of this game is so much that we just kind of glossed over it. And how dare us, right? I hope his mom calls us out for this. The play of Destel, right? Obviously, you don't win this game without Destel coming free. And when I tell you, man, just the pure joy I get out of watching the kind of moment, it's a split second in real time, but when Dez comes off the block and he has just a free shot, the speed at which he runs to the quarterback is hysterical to me.
I wasn't going to say it, but
just eats him, man. Just freaking trash compactor.
It's like watching Vince Wilfork run.
Yeah, right. It's hysterical to me because in real time, dude was just moving. He was moving with a purpose. And Destel is athletic as get out, man. Like, don't let the defensive lineman label fool you there. He is an absolute beast. Like, great footwork, great hands, great power. As Vince told me, if he tried to block me, he literally would cave my chest in. I believe that with everything in me. And so for him to get that sack, and then the best part about that, again, just to kind of take it a step further, when you talk about guys getting onto the field and getting an opportunity, I couldn't be happier to see Cam Wilson out there getting a chance because he's been kind of stuck behind Yasir Abdullah the last couple of years after coming in as Louisville's top recruit in the 21 class or 19, whatever class it was, 21, 20.
Yeah, one of those classes.
One of those early on classes. And he's out there, gets the fumble, scoops it up. And obviously, we know what ended up happening on the other side. So want to give a shout out to them. And continuing along on Twitter here, Sam_pretty7, he said Ashton is a dog, and he was held on every play. I mean, the tape shows that that's 100% true. At UofL_athletics, it says, and no flags. Is that no? That's not true. Louisville committed penalties, didn't they?
Oh, they committed penalties. That's actually one. That wasn't going to be my big takeaway at the end of the segment, but I mean, Louisville committed 7 penalties. Now, granted, the actual penalty yardage was not that much. I think it was under 50 or something like that. But I mean, I referenced how earlier it was a 3rd-and-1 play, and I looked it up. It was a 3rd-and-1 play, and Jimmy Callaway commits a false start on 3rd-and-1 as a wide receiver. Can't do that. And then there was a drive in the 3rd quarter. It was their one drive in the second half that did not end in points. On that drive alone, they committed 3 penalties. That cannot happen, especially one of the cons to Jeff Brohm's hiring was that some of his teams at Purdue were prone to this kind of thing. And it was a little bit concerning to see them commit 7 penalties right off the rip.
They were badly timed penalties, too. I mean, I think Devin Neal, Quincy Riley both had one in the second half on the defensive side. I think they had, some of the ones that you mentioned on offense that, kind of set them back. It was frustrating, but, again, ultimately it didn't cost them something that you kind of take in stride. You move on from, the Sunday practices, as Vince said. I'm sure they're getting after it, calling those mistakes out and being able to make some of those changes. A couple more tweets here at LZUp95. If Plummer can stand in there and make the throws, we have 3 to 5 receivers that can be really dangerous. We talked about that with Kevin Coleman and Jamari Thrash. I mean, I completely agree. Mari Huggins, Bruce. You didn't even have Jaden Thompson playing in this game. So there's opportunity for these guys to continue to grow on this. Continues on. Offensive line looked good. No sacks, no tackles for loss. I mean, they're the MVP probably shared with Jawar and in the kicking game with Brock Travisstead, honestly, because they kept Jack clean. The little bit of pressure that they did get on Jack was at just him taking forever to get rid of the football at times.
Yep,
but overall,
covered sacks or almost sacks.
I got to say, I thought the lineup of the offensive line was beautiful. Like, I loved where they ended up with the starting 5 with Willie Tyler as the left tackle, Eric Miller at right tackle, moving Renato Brown into guard. I mean, that's a legitimate top offensive line in the ACC, dude. That's an experienced, powerful, athletic, proven offensive line that you can really get behind running the football and protecting your quarterback. Those are 2 big things that you don't have to worry about this season, that as the year goes on and some of these things like at LZUp95 is calling out, Jack Plummer gets more comfortable, dude, the sky is really limitless and how good they can be. And then finally, he said D tightened up after halftime, which was good to see. The Destel forced fumble was a coverage sack, which, again, you talk about Jarvis Brownlee, Storm Duck, Quincy Riley. At Sean Tribal Chief said this play broke their back. That was the Jawar Jordan run. I mean, you talk about the game being still really close. Louisville gets the ball 29-28, and it felt like, okay, this is an opportunity to drive down the field, and Jawar just takes their breath away. I mean, he literally, dude, they have no shot to really react to that, and ultimately, it's the difference in the game. Love to see it for Jawar. Absolutely love to see it. You should go out and support Jawar by buying the Jaws merchandise, because you want to be supporting a guy like that. And then finally, right here at Crow_GG says simple undersat. We never battled back last night and lose by 14 plus, no doubt. Under Brohm, we made adjustments at half, and Brohm challenged everyone to be better, and they were. It's that easy. It's 100% what this program has been missing. Like, I can only imagine what Brohm said at halftime. I mean, we kind of heard some of the alluding to what he said in the press conference, but I would imagine it was something along the lines of, this is pretty effing pathetic. Jack, you're playing like defense. You're giving up tackles to guys who aren't, your teammate anymore. Like, you don't have to do that if you don't want to. I can only imagine what was said, and whatever it was, man, it gave them a different demeanor. And that's
funny because in the post-game press conference, when the players were asked about that, and specifically Destel, while he's in the process of being asked this, Jack Plummer kind of, his eyes light up, and as Des is about to is starting to give his answer, he's like very clearly shaking his head no, like, Des, don't you answer that question, don't you tell them what they said. And then Brohm has said himself, like, yeah, I didn't really raise any spirits in that locker room. I mean, that's as clear as it gets right there. Like, he tore their ass a new one.
Yeah, I believe it. And that's what they need, man. They need a coach who can give them the demeanor and the edge shift that changes that at halftime. A couple adjustments and an attitude adjustment goes a long way. We're going to step aside, and on the other side, we're going to talk about Murray State, Louisville's big game home opener on Thursday night. We will give you some of the details of what to expect in that game, give our predictions. Thursday night, let me tell you, you are going to need our friends at Manscaped. Like, that is what it is when you go out into football weather early in the year. It is 85, not a cloud in the sky. You can expect to sweat. And when you sweat, we all know what that chub rub does. Like, we've all been in that spot where there is no going back. You are feeling it. You are truly in pain trying to enjoy a football game, but you do no longer need to be in pain thanks to our friends at Manscaped. Some of the great products, the ball deodorant will get you right, okay? I'm telling you, it will get you right. I mean, it doesn't get any better than this, Matt. Like, when you're talking about being a man and needing some love, your feet get a little stinky, you get the foot duster, man. Get those feet, the foot deodorant, get those feet cleaned up. Get the plow, and if you know what I mean, when you got a couple of unwanted neighbors downstairs and you need to do some trimming, the plow will get you right. Check out our friends at Manscaped, manscaped.com. Use the code PINKSEATS at checkout for 20% off. Let our friends get you right. At least give them a try. I'm telling you, man. Your wives, your friends, everyone around you, your coworkers will thank you as you smell better and go about your day being more productive. We will be right back on the other side here from the Pink Seats podcast. Jacob Lane, Matt McGavic. Don't go anywhere. We are back on the other side. Jacob Lane, Matt McGavic, at Jacob Lane08, at Matt_McGavic. Check out the Louisville Report of Sports Illustrated, at U of L Report on X, Twitter, at the State of Lou.
I'm still calling it Twitter.
I know, man. It's so funny. It's like they paid all that money to rebrand for everyone to continue to say, essentially, you talk about earlier rebranding to Drew. If you remember, Jim's like, nah, I'm not calling you that. That's essentially what we've done to Twitter, continuing to call it by its original name. Mm-hmm. And speaking of X, man, it's going to be at Louisville, hopefully trying to X off Murray State on its schedule on Thursday night. Home opener, blackout, season getting underway at L&N Cardinal Stadium with an FCS opponent who is coming off of a 2-9 season, 1-4 in conference play last year. Picks up a 41-10 win over Presbyterian this weekend. not necessarily an exciting opponent, right? But an exciting opportunity to hopefully kind of dominate, flex your muscles, and maybe take advantage of some snaps to get better and prepared for the next couple of weeks. What do you think, Matt?
Oh, I fully expect Louisville to take advantage of this matchup and get as many snaps to all the younger or inexperienced guys as they can. Like, keep the starters in for maybe a half, and then once the game kicks off in the second half, just put in the younger guys, put in some freshmen, get guys some playing time, because as the season gets on, when people start dropping like flies with injuries, as we've all seen with every football team across America, I mean, some of those younger and inexperienced guys, they're going to need to step up, and they're going to need some of these reps from earlier in the season.
Yeah, no doubt. And a team like Murray State offers you that opportunity on your schedule. A lot of teams open with cupcakes, get that win under their belt early in the game. And man, when you talk about cupcakes, dude, how about Oregon hanging 81 on Portland State? Arkansas State getting a 77 burger dropped on them. They got Butch Jones crying on the sideline.
Shout out Will Stein for the Ducks putting up 81.
Have you ever seen a team score that much? I don't think I've ever seen that in real life. That's like some video game numbers.
I mean, not since, what was it, that LSU Texas A&M like 7 overtime game from a few years ago?
They had 7 rushing touchdowns. I mean, like,
Good
it was
God.
just like, you feel bad for Portland State. But in some regards, man, these college football teams have no business playing these games. Like, there is so many deserving mid-major programs who you could play against, so to where you don't have to do this. Like, to me, there's no point in this, right? There's nothing we're going to learn this weekend. We're not going to walk away unless it's a close game, having any type of thoughts about what Louisville could be, what Louisville couldn't be. You know, we're not gonna do that. And because of that, it just feels pointless. But it does offer, you know, the opportunity to get a win under your belt. And we're going to see a lot of guys. With that being the case, I want to take you in the Wayback Machine real quick to the last time Louisville played Murray State. Do you know when that was, Matt?
2017.
Do you know who might have appeared in that participation chart the last time Louisville played Murray State?
I mean, Lamar Jackson, if that's what you're
true, but I am not hinting at that. No, in fact, the last time Louisville played Murray State, a member of this show played in a football game. And that was when Vincent Lococo.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Vincent Lococo appeared in the Murray State game.
Oh, yeah, there he is.
And that 55-10 win. How about that, man? He's not here to tell us what his stat line ended up being, but I can only imagine it was 40 tackles, 25 tackles for loss, helped 14 ball carriers score touchdowns. I'm sure Vince was balling, man. But no, this is an opportunity to get guys on the field. You know, obviously, before you can do that, your starters have to play well. And for the defense, they're going to get tested, you know, with some talented guys. They do have a wide receiver who has put up some numbers so far. He caught 2 touchdowns this past weekend, was an all Missouri Valley Football Conference honorable mention, Taylor Shields. And then they have DJ Williams, who is a dual threat quarterback who missed most of last season with an injury after the season opener, but is back, started the game this past weekend, and really helped that offense be productive against Presbyterian. They're going to offer, you know, a unique opportunity for Louisville to kind of just be able to hone in on the fundamentals of tackling, getting to the quarterback, being sound in coverage. And I think with that being the case, the starters have the opportunity to potentially get out of there at halftime. I mean, we'll see kind of what the game looks like, but talk about an offense that can put up points if they get the opportunity, Matt. I mean, you could see this team having 4 drives in the first quarter and potentially scoring 4 touchdowns. You know what I mean?
I know Murray State's coming off of a pretty decisive win, 41-10 over Presbyterians. I'm like, okay, yeah, it's not bad. So I went looking to see what the spread was. Take a wild guess as to what the spread for this game was.
26.5 points is what I'm going to guess. Is that the spread?
You were close. It's 28.5.
Okay. All right. It just feels like a good mid-major FCS spread right there.
Yeah.
Is there an over-under? I'm just curious to see what that might look like.
I barely found a spread for this game, man.
Yeah, right. Yeah. These games, this is where the degenerates come out, is the Louisville Murray State game, trying to capitalize on that 28.5. I would hammer the over on this. I think Louisville's going to score a lot of points. And I think this defense, man, They are good. They are good. I don't think they're going to give up more than maybe 13 to 17 points in this, and if they do, it's in garbage time. But I think
Yeah.
that they could score 60 plus. I really do. I mean, we'll see what that looks like when you get in the second half, but imagine a scenario where you're playing in the second half and you have Pierce Clarkson in at quarterback and Jaleel McClain and Kataris Hicks are out there running routes, and you dial something up. Brian's dialing something up. Jeff's dialing something up. And you're talking about just putting touchdowns up on the board, moving the ball at will. You blink and you got 60 points. So I don't think this is going to be much of a test for the offense. The defense, maybe a little bit more so, but I think that they're going to be able to kind of hold their own, really flex that muscle, as I said, of domination and get out of there, giving up,
Yeah.
like I said,
I
6,
mean,
13, something like that.
yeah. I mean, just think about it like this. How would you grade Louisville's offense against Georgia Tech? Like an A to F. What would you grade it?
If I had to grade the offense, I mean, probably like a B. I mean, it's not the best grade in the world. It's definitely not an A, but look, when you connect on 3 passing touchdowns and Jawar Jordan has a 70-plus yard touchdown, you don't give up any tackles for loss or sacks. What else do you want? I mean, I know that Jack was inaccurate, but outside of that, dude, they did their thing.
Even with that grade, they still put up 474 yards of offense and 39 points. Even with the inefficiencies that they had in the first half. If they don't eclipse 500 yards in this game, something probably went wrong. Either that or they pulled the starters way early.
Right. Just played kind of like a conservative approach, not to show too much ahead of Indiana type of deal. Yeah. Right. I mean, I think ultimately, when you're looking at the big storylines for this game, can you clean up the penalties? Can Jack Plummer show that he can be consistent for a full helping of a game and not need a second half to kind of readjust? And then ultimately, how many guys can you get in? Can you play down to like a TJ Capers on defense? I mean, that's assuming he's healthy. Can you play down to a Donajay Green? Can you get Madden Sanker and Luke Burgess into the game? Can you get some of these freshmen reps out there? Pierce Clarkson, like I think all of Card Nation desperately wants to see Pierce Clarkson in this game.
Oh yeah,
because you have 4 to blow for these freshmen before a red shirt decision has to be made. So
there's going to be plenty of freshmen to play in this game. I mean, if this isn't a game where freshmen play, I don't know what is.
That's right. That's what you hope this game is for. And then the rest of the year, if you get any of those games where you get any more guys in at that level, you take that as just a major win because you've blown somebody out that you are playing in an ACC game or in a non-conference game. That's a big deal. So, all right, let's do this, Matt. Let's transition into predictions. We could spend a lot more time talking about Murray State, but it's, it is what it is. We don't really know necessarily what the score is going to end up being, how many guys are going to get in, but we're going to just jump into predictions here. Let's do this. Let's do score of the game, and we'll do the number of quarterbacks who play. That's going to be our 2 predictions for tonight. And real quick, before we do that, let's just recap what last week looked like. We predicted the score and ultimate outcome of the game, and then who scores the first touchdown. We all got the game right with Louisville winning, so we all get 1 point. So it's an even battle heading into week 2. We all missed the bonus point of who scores the first touchdown for Louisville. So no points given out for that. So, Matt, let's do this. Score prediction and the quarterbacks who play in this game. I'll start with you. What is your prediction and what is your number of quarterbacks?
I remember when I did my first season prediction that my projection there was 55-10. I'm going to go 59-7 now, just because given how inefficient the offense was for a decent chunk of that game and what they were still able to put up, they should be able to move the ball. And I do think Murray is going to score in garbage time, but I just can't see it being more than just a single score. If it is, it's a touchdown and a field goal, if that much. And as for the quarterbacks, I'm going to go with 3. Jack, obviously. Brock gets some time in the third quarter. And I think down the stretch, we're going to see some of Pierce. He's going to get his share of time.
I will go 52-13. I also agree with you. I think this is going to be a very productive outing for the offense. I told you I think the defense probably late when you got freshmen and walk-on in there, maybe give up a score, a field goal to allow Murray State to get into double digits. So I'll go 52-13, and then I'm going to go with 4 quarterbacks. I'm going to stick with the same 3 that you have, but I'm going to throw in Evan Conley because I think that Evan Conley is going to play. You can shake your head at me. I may be wrong, but I think Evan Conley is going to play this game. So we'll go with 4 quarterbacks. And if it's not Conley, I get the benefit of Harrison Bailey, right? So we'll see. So it doesn't have to be Evan. I just get to go with the number, and that's 4. We got predictions from Vince and from Presley both here. Presley goes Louisville 62, Murray State 16. He is just like you. He goes with 3 quarterbacks. And then 49-10 is what Vince has, and he just has 2 quarterbacks getting into the game. So going conservative with his answer there. So we'll see. Hopefully Louisville next week. We're talking about heading into that IU game on Saturday, coming off of a fairly large win in terms of the quantity of the score. Any closing thoughts, Matt McGavic, before we get out of here?
I'm just glad to be starting off the season with the win after the way that game began.
You and thousands of other people. I can only imagine what it was like leaving Mercedes-Benz Stadium on Friday night in Atlanta, walking through the streets, celebrating a win, and only hope that in 2 weeks in Indiana, when Louisville goes to Indianapolis, that we can do the same thing and celebrate the same win in another major metropolitan, man. We're metropolitan winners, baby.
Right. Actually, I do have one more thing before we sign off. So I've got Florida State LSU on in the background right now. And you know who just converted a really important 3rd down for the Noles?
Jordan Travis.
The big guy. Is that the big guy?
Oh, Johnny Wilson.
Johnny Wilson.
Johnny Wilson, man. We will get out of here on that from the Pink Seats podcast. Be sure to subscribe anywhere that you get your shows from. Please rate, review. If you are a weekly listener, if you are a first-time listener, we want to hear about your experience, what you think of the show. Rate on any of the platforms that you listen to. And if you're a YouTube listener or if you are on YouTube, please be sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel at The State of Lou. We post the show audio each week, so you can listen there. Anywhere that you are, we want to be. And also follow and interact with the show at Pink Seats Pod on Twitter. Check out The State of Louisville at The State of Lou, at U of L Report. Check out both of the websites. Keep up with us each week, and we will be back next week, baby. Another neutral field game up in IU. They call it a neutral field, but it feels a little bit like it's one-sided in terms of the location. We'll see what that looks like. Until then, go Cards.